So there's a lot of people that are talking about reparations out there for Black people because of slavery. Well, again, I ask everybody, listen, just do your homework. Just do your homework. Don't just please do your homework. So the Great Society program, so we're talking food stamps, HUD, housing, childcare, all of those things. And we're just talking about what the government has spent in the last 60 years. Wait, hold on to your seat. The number is something like $22 trillion. $22 trillion on those programs.
Right.
Just do your homework.
Wow.
And so over the last 60 years, and then the question becomes this: out of $22 trillion, what has been the evidence of progress? The government has spent this actually on these inner city programs. And so you got to kind of work backwards. You got to ask the questions. And I ask everybody, well, how is that money really flowing down to these communities? How are they? And we all know that when money flows, people get in line. So the question becomes, who's in line for our communities? I'll just leave it at that.
Well, you talk about communities, okay? And I always ask the question, because you mentioned about the 1950s. And I remember there's a community right now that was called, it's called Overtown, historic, okay? And there's one other hotel, the Hampton House Hotel. And I have heard stories at how, in the short message here is that our Black people used to own Overtown. I'm talking about straight up own it, Black businesses and everything. But then when you walk right through there now, I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, what happened here? What took place? Okay. Now a portion of it that used to be called Overtown is now called Wynwood. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, what happened? But we can look at what's really taking place right here in front of us and see that something is wrong. And I'm going to have to go back here, follow up on you on that when you talk about who's running communities. I had stopped in Coconut Grove yesterday morning, okay? And under the tree, I saw it had to be about 8 or 9 Black men sitting under the tree alone, lined up against the sidewalk. And I'm like, look at all this wealth that is sitting here, all the possibilities, the potential. But what are they all doing? What's their excuse that instead of you making something of yourself, that you want to sit here? So if the fathers are out of place, then that means the whole family would decline. There is no substance. There is nothing there to hold. Going back to that root, the roots is not there in order to hold this thing here together. We have talked about this, and even Jason Riley mentioned it in his book about false Black power. So what would you say has been the benefit of Blacks in politics? Because you said something there about this trillions of dollars that has been spent. So what has been the benefit of politicians, of having Black politicians in office?
Yeah, that's another tough question. So I think you got to look historically again. You got to look at who's been in power in Black communities, and this is just us facing down what's going on. If you look at all of the really crime-ridden cities across the nation, the cities that's really suffering from poverty, the cities that have dilapidated buildings all over the place, you can look right now. You can Google it and ask yourself, just pick Chicago. Who's in charge in Chicago?
Absolutely.
Washington, D.C. Who's in charge in Washington, D.C.? L.A. And we aren't talking about a situation where there's just one Black person that's in charge. You have a situation where you have like Black superintendent, Black mayor, majority Black city council. And then the question becomes, why are these cities still suffering? what's going on, what's happening at the fundamental level. But this is really an after effect of the civil rights movement. When people look at the civil rights movement, they forgot all the other stuff that took place that made the civil rights movement effective. One of those things was a high view. Blacks had a high view of self. There was high culture within the blacks. Dr. Martin Luther King wrote a book called Why We Can't Wait, and where he outlines the requirements to even participate as a part of the civil rights movement. And anybody who was an active participant, he had, and it's in the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. It's right there on the big wall. There was 10 points that everybody had to adhere to, and at the top of it, they had to affirm Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That was number one. And so if you think about that component being first, and then the importance of the family, the importance of dignity, the importance of projecting the proper image, the importance of unity. The church was still strong back then. And so what you have now is people look back to Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, and all of those guys and what they did. And they says, man, they got things done politically. But that's because it was the last resort. That was the last resort, right? And what's happened is Black politicians have basically rode the wave. This is my opinion. Rode the wave of Martin Luther King's legacy all the way to office. And they really haven't, as a collective, put anything into place. So National Black Caucus, when you really look at what they're doing, and this is not against what they're doing. Right. What I'm saying is with 60 years of influence, why are we still in the same place that we're in? It seems like we're in the same place that we're in right now. And as everybody says, everything rises and falls on leadership. I would say right now, Black folks, it's time that we reevaluate all these people who've been in power. Reevaluate. I'm saying we got to kick them out, but take a long, hard look at what they're doing and asking, is my community, is my property, my property value going up? Do I feel safer in my neighborhoods? Right. I think we got to ask these questions.
Right. This is what I said to me, to kind of follow with what you're saying. One of the points that you made about no change, it's interesting that Patrick Moynihan, he said that. He said that it will decline unless things are changed. Now, the government intervened, but if you ask me, that was not what we needed. It was not that what they gave us or trying to give us. Like, even if you look at affirmative action, it didn't help us. It did not help us. If anything, it took us on a decline. Now, everybody needs a leg up here and there, and I'm not trying to discriminate against that. I said this here to myself, especially after reading this book. There were three things, and you mentioned them, that the white folks, I'm going to say it that way, gave the Black folks. They gave us our liberty. Y'all can say, well, we ain't got liberty, but yes, I'm free, y'all. I don't know what y'all saying or how y'all think, well, I'm free. And I've been free for the past 60 years. I ain't never had nobody tell me what I could. I ain't never had to go and try to drink out the color fountain. I ain't never had to sit in the back. I don't know what that's like. I do not know what that's like. But they gave us our liberty. They gave us civil rights. Okay, they gave us the right to vote. And you know what? After that, they were saying, okay, we gave you, do whatever you want. Just go. Leave us alone. I'm going to phrase it that way. Leave us alone. That's why, every time, oh my God, every time Black folks start coming in the community, what do white folks do? Leave. Folks ain't going to like what I'm about to say. Leave them alone. We can have our own community, but we need to do it right. And we need to make sure that those who are in leadership are held accountable. Stop trying to be friends with them. The only reason we want to be friends with them so we can get have our own perks or whatever. No, it ain't about that. But we need to go back to the family. We need to go back to fathers. You know what? This is what I ran into. This is what I saw. This is what I used to encounter. When I would go into these homes, and here it is, I see 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. year olds sitting, lying in the bed or what have you, okay, and they playing video games or whatever, and I start having a conversation with them, and it grieves my heart that they have no guidance, no structure. Well, where your dad? I don't know. Well, who you living with? I'm living with mom. Well, what your mom doing? I'm gonna ask this question. I am absolutely certain that a lot of our black politicians have came from the same areas, and they have arrived. What are they doing to fix that? What are they doing to bring change to that? Let me ask this question. What would you say, what actions would you say that we need to take in order to obtain that place of fulfillment and accomplishment? Because you know something, that another thing that Mr. Patrick Moynihan says, he said that unless we fix what we're fixing, black race will always be last. We will always come last. And how can we feel that way right now? And you know, another thing too, that it behooves me, why do we compare ourselves with the white man? Oops, I shouldn't say that, but I did.
Yeah.
Because it's the truth. We can have our own. Man, we are wealthy. We can be wealthy. We are wealthy. We're great people. Beautiful culture. But we need to stop wanting to be like the white man. I know folks ain't going to like what I just said, but it's the truth. Let's build our own communities. You see, I see the Jews, whether they're Orthodox or whatever, they get in the community, and that's all you see. You don't see them running, chasing down politicians and trying to get a political, because they understand that that's not their fix. Their fix is to build their own families, build their own communities. It doesn't matter. The same thing with Asian folks. The same thing with even the Cubans. Now, we got a lot of Cubans in politics, but yet still, look how they take over their communities. You know, in some of the communities I ride down, I see nothing but businesses. I don't want to get ahead of you.
No, it's okay.
But how can we fix what we fix? Because do you know, we both talked that there is a fix, and there are certain things that we need. If we target these things, okay, guess what? We can change where we at right now. We don't have to constantly be thinking about or relying on the fact that it's politicians that's gonna bring me a loaf of bread when I get hungry. No, learn how to go out there and work. I believe that God, I know for a fact that God has put a means of wealth, of productivity in each and every one of us. Anyway, we're very smart people. But anyway, let me repeat the question, because I just went on.
I got it. I got the question.
Okay, so what action do you think we need to take in order to really to obtain the success that we need as a black culture?
So I think there's three things. I think, you know, all men, you're married, do everything that you can do to stay married.
That's good.
And I think the best thing that black men can do is lead by example. I just love your wife, protect her. You know, love your kids, spend time with them, quality time. You know, where it's their time. You know, with my kids, all three of them, they all have their own time during the week. I'm usually tired half the time. I'm just being honest with you. But they know that they have that time that's set aside for them to do whatever. Sometimes we don't talk about nothing. Right. Sometimes we just go and get some Dunkin' Donuts and they say, "Thank you, Daddy," and that's it. But what it's doing is, the whole point is to let them know, hey, listen, you're special, and it's also setting the tone for the future when they have bigger issues that they're going to have to deal with. Right. I want them to know that, hey, listen, Daddy's accessible, and you know, Daddy will try and give you advice, but I want to kind of say this to everybody, and I was sharing this with you before we got on. There's two fundamental laws within the universe. There's two big categories. There's the physical laws of the universe. That's gravity. That's how the engine works in a car. Physics. Building. So there's no black architecture. There's no white architecture. No, right. There's no black math or white math. Math right. is math. If you want to go to the bank and say, hey, listen, 2 + 1 = 4, the banker's going to laugh at you, whether you're white, black, Jew, or what have you. Right. It doesn't matter. We want our bankers to understand math according to. So we know that those laws are accessible to everybody, whether they're a believer or not. Right. But then there's moral laws. The moral laws have to do with how human beings behave and how they treat each other. And one of the most fundamental, basic of the moral laws is the family structure. It was the first institution by which God established. And so watch this. If you look culture to culture, the prime, one of the prime determinants of cultural, economic, generational wealth, what people talk about, is the family structure. It's the divorce rate. You can tie one to the other. Thomas Sowell, he's written a number of books: Conflict, Division, Disparities, and Race and Racism. I'm getting a couple, but Thomas Sowell, look it up. He really outlines this, and he actually shows that blacks who stay married actually outperform whites who stay married, who are in the same group and category. Right. He says it happens. He says, but if you look at the entire black race, that which includes those individuals who are divorced, single parents, what have you, of course, this is why we have an economic divide. So one of the ways to fix it is we have to adhere to that moral law. Right. And if blacks stay married, and hear me, and I'm saying this not as a male chauvinist, black men, you guys got to run your houses, not in an abusive way, but according to the word of God, not in an abusive way. You got to stand up for what's right. And then, and I say this as lovingly as I can, you know, women, you guys also have to adhere to what God's standard. We talk about this in our home. It's not about a male chauvinistic thing. I have to serve my wife. I have to protect my wife. That's right. My responsibility. I can't take a day off as a dad. And so if my wife isn't feeling well, I have to step up, right. You know? And so I look at it as if blacks adhere to those moral laws that are within the universe, and also adhere to those physical laws, which also includes simple things like don't spend money on stuff that you can't maintain. Don't right. buy that car that you can't buy new tires for. Don't buy the car because you can't maintain it. I like. Don't buy anything that you can't maintain, and that's right. An economic principle. So I think if we start there, and then also one other thing I want to mention, Dad, this is very important. we got to learn how to get along as blacks. We got to learn how to get along, and we got to learn how to share. And we got to get out of this crabs in the bucket mentality. I got to get to the top. No, listen, if we all listen, if there's a plate of food and there's 5 people and everybody eat, nobody goes, and everybody gets a slice, nobody ever goes hungry. Absolutely. But if one person says, oh no, this is mine, I'm the one who bought this, and so I should get more, that type of mentality is also destroying the community. We got to share.